Hey everyone, Jarek here. A couple of months ago, I covered Warhammer 40k Boltgun. 40k has an incredibly interesting universe, so I've wanted to know more, but the only things they've offered are things that aren't quite of my interest. I'm not really into board games, I'm not into D&D, RPGs aren't tremendously my thing, so my thought process was 40k would be a really good franchise to make proper action games out of. And there have been a few, but they weren't exactly genre-defining. So my thoughts stayed, man, all these different guns and factions, the wars going on, all these different creatures would make for a really good shooter. And finally, we got that with Boltgun, and it is very good. If you haven't watched that review, I would highly recommend that game. However, something I realized after I played that game is that Boltgun is kind of a sequel to Space Marine. I'll be honest, I know very little about 40k and don't keep up with Warhammer 40k, so I didn't know Space Marine even existed until Boltgun came out. And Space Marine 2 is apparently a thing in the works, so if you want to get into Space Marine, now is the time. I have something cool I want to briefly talk about. Last weekend, at the time of recording this video, I ran a large tournament. At least, large by Rivals of Aether standards.
Hey, we have a development happening here. So, Cork and Elkies have agreed they're going to have a quote-unquote money match, but the agreement is Cork wants her medal. So, if Cork wins, Cork just takes the medal. If Elkies wins, Elkies takes the money and his medal.
Oh! Now, I had been working with Into the AM for years, so I reached out to them asking if they wanted to sponsor the tournament. Their reply was more or less apprehensive, but the ultimate decision was, we really respect what you're doing with that community. Sure, we'll just chuck some money into the pot bonus, give you some shirts for free, and sponsor your tournament. And this is why I love working with this company so much. It helps that their shirts are really high quality, sure, and I really do like their product, so I'll shill for them perfectly fine. I use them on a daily basis. But I'm not just talking to a company, I'm talking to actual people. They like the videos I'm making, so they support the videos I'm making. They like the fact that I'm putting in effort to run events for a community, so their intentions behind their sponsors are more than just, let's make a bunch of money. Their intentions are, let's help a content creator, let's help a community, and also we do have some good products for sale, and they're also the sponsor of this video. Again, the company I'm talking about is IntoTheAM.com. They sell incredibly comfortable and good-looking clothes, and if you were on planet Earth, you probably have to wear clothes. I know it's very unfortunate. So if you want to get 10% off site-wide, you can use my link, IntoTheAM.com/dragonshirts. Huge thanks to Into the AM, not for just sponsoring this video, but also sponsoring my tournament I decided to run out of my pocket. Trust me, the one thing you really need when you're running a tournament is money. So it was greatly appreciated. My first impression was that this main menu is really cool. Yeah, this game knows what it wants to be. Thankfully, it's a pretty good PC release. Actually buying it costs more than it should though. On Steam, the only thing you can buy is the Anniversary Edition, which is still $60. This game came out in 2011, which means the Anniversary Edition came out a few years ago. Why is it still $60? And why can I not just buy the base game? Thankfully, on GOG you can do that, where it's $40. Still too much. I guess they're trying to cash in on the fact that Space Marine 2 is coming out sometime soon. Anyway, as a PC release, I really don't have any complaints. The FOV isn't too narrow, all the settings I want are here, aiming feels nice and smooth. It just works. Graphically, this game definitely came out in the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't look bad. It's serviceable. However, the thing I immediately notice is that, boy, is there a lot of gray and brown. Yeah, this was that era. Everything needed to be gray and brown. We didn't know what color was. Thankfully, this only applies to the environments, and it doesn't make the environments look bad. Quite the contrary, there is such a large scale to the buildings you're going into. There's a ton of attention to detail that I assume Warhammer 40k fans just enjoy. And the thing that definitely didn't disappoint and is well above average are the animations. Every stomp looks like it has so much weight behind it and so much purpose. Even just the sprinting animation kind of has that jump forward that you would expect to see in a cartoon. It's easy to see if you look at the arms jumping forward. It's clearly intentional and it looks really good. Space Marine could have gone the easy way and just had some heavy metal playing in the background while you're being a badass, but instead they decided to go with a full orchestra. Now, nothing wrong with some Doom-style metal in the background of your chaos, but this orchestra works way better. They didn't take the simplistic, easy route. It fits whatever is happening on screen, and the opening cutscene grabbed me right away. But really the standout above all else are the melee animations. This game feels like a mix between a third-person shooter and a hack and slash, and every melee attack looks and feels like it has a person in space armor that weighs as much of a tank punching the opponent, because that's what's happening. To make things even better, there are a ton of brutal executions, and I'll talk about this later. And sometimes Space Marines forget how strong they are. Where'd it go? He's out of here, he's gone. As for now, we'll talk about the story. There's honestly not a whole lot to say. A lot happens, but most of what happens is, okay, our mission has changed, let's do this instead. It's more an excuse to push you towards more combat rather than actually developing the plot or characters. That's not to say there's nothing here, far from it, but there definitely could have been much more. You play as Captain Titus. You're an Ultramarine with your squad mates of Sergeant Sidonus and the inexperienced Leandros. Sidonus is your right-hand man, whereas Leandros is the new kid on the block. There's been an orc invasion, and purging is kind of what Ultramarines do. This goes as you would expect it to, until you meet Imperial Inquisitor Drogon. This is where I'll put a spoiler warning, although honestly there's not a whole lot to spoil, and if you're here you probably just want to know how the hell Boltgun connects to this game. So weakest spoiler warning of all time? Look at the YouTube chapters or the timestamp down below to skip forward if you don't want to be spoiled of anything. Well, Drogon informs you that there is a weapon that can wipe out the orcs, but you need a power source. You get this power source grabbing it with your bare hands, which should kill you, but doesn't for some reason. Apparently Forces of Chaos are the only people that would be able to live that. At least that's what's theorized. You then use the power source to use this weapon, and oh, who would have known, you're being backstabbed. Yeah, so Drogon was already dead, and his corpse was being possessed and used by Nemeroth. He really tricked you to open a warp gate to the realm of chaos. The only reason I know who this faction is because I played Boltgun. Space Marine was supposed to be the introduction to entirely new, maybe 40k fans? And they don't explain who these people are at all, you just know they're bad, which I guess is good enough, but it would have been nice if you got more information. Long story short, you eventually destroy the spire, closing the warp gate. Titus then kills the Chaos Lord through a quicktime event, which is a little annoying. Not the worst one I've played, by far not the worst one I've played, but underwhelming for a final boss. Side note, why is it in media so often when they make an interesting character like this with completely different legs, a tail, wings sometimes, and then they just slap an ugly human face on it? I know in this case, technically he's transforming, but you can have so much cooler of a design than that. And yes, I'm a bit biased here, but come on, go all in. Your reward for killing the boss and saving the day, a visit from an Inquisitor. Turns out Leandros still a little spooked about you not dying from the whole warp drive thingy, and since that's against the code, he tells one of them. Obviously, this is a bad situation, but that's just how the game ends. Abruptly. This ending blows. Had I played this back in 2011 and then realized I probably will never see another Space Marine, I would have been really upset. However, I didn't know about this game until very recently, and now I know Space Marine 2 is coming out, so I guess we wait and see. We still need an answer as to why he's not dead from holding all of that energy, but we'll see. Boltgun is very loosely attached to this game. Honestly, you're mainly playing cleanup on Graia after the events of Space Marine. I guess you could call it a sequel, but it's a very loose sequel. So for those of you that were curious like me, there you go. I completely welcome that idea though. I love it when there's tie-ins like this. It's just really neat. Okay, but let's talk about what this game is really about. Ultramarines being badasses and purging Graia, otherwise known as the actual gameplay. Like I said, this game is sort of a mixture between a third-person shooter and a hack and slash. The actual gunplay feels fine enough. You got plenty of 40k weapons, which is where 40k is really going to shine. The base bolt gun doesn't even really jib enemies, it just kind of makes them pop. Fine by me. Sniping is surprisingly fun in a game that is supposed to be aggressive. You get other weapons like the melt-a-gun being just as good as it is in bolt gun. Yeah, I love this thing. This game doesn't have a shotgun, but I mean, we basically have one. And you get this long-range bolter thing that I forget the name of. You're going to want this later in the game, it's incredibly useful. You can carry 4 weapons on you at a time, plus your melee weapon. The melee weapons range from a knife, to your chainsword, to an axe, to the hammer. At one point the game tells you something along the lines of pause to see your combo trees. I don't remember the actual phrasing. But when you look at your combo trees, it's just 2 buttons. This is fine enough, and I'm glad they tell me how I can do these things, but honestly, you would have figured this out on your own even if it didn't tell you. It's simplistic, but surprisingly addictive and fun. Your base melee attack is, well, a melee attack. You can chain 4 of these together by pressing melee 4 times in a row. However, you get another melee button that is supposed to stun enemies. The secondary melee button is what allows you to do alternate attacks in your combos. Stronger enemies need you to do more damage before you can stun them, so you'll have to commit to doing longer combos before you can stun them. This will leave them open to an execution. Executing enemies will give you health back. However, you are not invincible while this is going on, so you can die while you're stuck in this animation, which does feel really bad, and I'm still conflicted on how I feel on that. But at the same time, if you were invincible, this game would be really, really easy. Now you might be saying, wow, that sounds really similar to glory kills in Doom. And you'd be right. But this game came out first. It's like they learned what Doom learned before Doom did. Now, they're not the first game to do this either, but this is a really good solution to force people to be more aggressive. And it's also just really rewarding. Like I said, it's surprisingly simple, yet at the same time, there's some depth in that simplicity. It's a game you can pick up and understand right away, yet still notice little tiny things and still do different things. It's just fun. And the ability to carry different weapons and melee weapons will change how you approach situations. How the hammer makes it so that you can only use just a pistol and your bolter. You can't use anything else. This is the most aggressive loadout you can go to, and it is fun. However, it is a little limiting, so I didn't tend to do it much. There is one more spin on what you can do. You occasionally get a jetpack. This is more of a pacing thing, and I am perfectly fine with that. You can jetpack everywhere and slam into the ground, killing everything. These sections are not exactly particularly difficult, but that's fine. Kind of reminds me how Fear 2 and Fear 3 use the mechs as sort of a way to spread apart the combat and pace it a little better. It's probably one of the only things I remember fondly in Fear 2. There is a couple of bosses in this game, but they're not great. They're not necessarily bad enough to talk about or insult. They kind of just exist. That's all I really want to say about them. If you're wondering what that little thing in the bottom left is, that's your fury meter. No, fury. Close enough. By activating this, your health recharges and you do even more damage. You'll quickly then get an upgrade to this fury meter to slow down time when aiming when activated, and that's all the upgrades you get. I mean, you get a few more upgrades, but they're not actually game-changing, it's just they recharge faster and stuff like that. This recharges by killing enemies. Again, it's simple, but it works. The gameplay itself is at its best when you're swapping between long-range combat and close melee combat. It's seamless, it feels like it doesn't know if it wants to be a third-person shooter or a hack and slash, so it just does both well. That is until later in the game. You see, the first half of the game, I was complaining that the only thing I'm fighting is orcs. There's not a whole lot of enemy diversity. Even within the orcs, there's not a whole lot. And that's fun for a while, but it does start to drag a little bit if you want to play this game in one long chunk. That is until the Chaos Portal opens. And then you get a few more enemies and, well, even then, not a whole bunch more, but it's something. Now, orcs in the early half of the game aren't too much of a threat. Except for these freaking mortar ones, which will randomly hit you and do half your health. They're inaccurate, and you have time to react to so much happening around you, you may not see them, and they're really annoying. Anyway, orcs aren't really too much of a threat. They're not very accurate, and you can deal with most of them through melee, or just shoot them. Take your pick, do what you want. Once chaos enemies come around, it completely changes. These enemies can melt you. So the way to survive here is to keep your distance and treat the game more like a typical cover shooter. It's never particularly bad, but it definitely doesn't play to the strength of this game. It can feel like a bit of a slog because of that. Keep this weapon, this strong sniper weapon, I forget what it's called. This thing is your best friend. Abuse it. Because again, these enemies can drain your health real fast. The white bar up there are your shields, they will recharge, but your health will not. Not without you getting close and executing them or having your fury meter filled. There are no medkits in this game. So again, it slows the game down a little too much in my opinion. Is it enough to make the second half of the game not good? No. Not even close. Honestly, it's more of a minor complaint. No, actually, it's not even a minor complaint. It's just seeing what the game could have been. There's so much promise. It could have gone from being a good game to a great game. But I guess there's no shame in being a good game. Not every game needs to be a 10 out of 10, and this one is certainly worth playing. It will take you roughly 5 to 6 hours long, so for a shooter, hack and slash thing, that's acceptable. It also has a co-op horde mode, which is fairly fun, and a multiplayer that a lot of people swear by, but I obviously haven't gotten a chance to play it if I only just found out about this game. If multiplayer is your thing, then I guess leave that in the comments and tell other people. A lot of people really loved it when I was streaming it. So yeah, there you go, there's Space Marine. This game was pleasantly good. 40k doesn't exactly have a good track record of action games, so I don't know how this one slipped my radar. If you're wanting to know if Space Marine is worth playing before Space Marine 2 comes out, it definitely is. Hey, huge thanks to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Go to intotheam.com/dragonshirts to get 10% off. Also, huge thanks to my YouTube members who get to see my videos at least 1 week ahead of time, and also a weekly shout out. I marathoned this game on Twitch. If you want to come hang out in the future, my Twitch is linked in the bottom right. You can click it and follow over there if you just want to talk. But most importantly, thank all of you for watching this video.